Hey guys, welcome to part 6 of the IPL preview, and we're going to be covering Punjab Kings this time. We have Monty, we have Nakul, the gang is back together for part 6. What can we expect from Punjab Kings? Will their name change? Will their fortunes also change? I'll start with you, Monty.
Look, Punjab Kings, I think, is an interesting team. It's like full of South Indians of north of India. Anil Kumble is obviously, from that region. But then I think that the real asset with Punjab Kings, you cannot cancel them out, is because of Andy Flower. Andy Flower is a brilliant coach. He really knows how to build, how to put things together. And, I'm sure he had in his mind that if we can get David Malan, which I think best batsman in the world, at such a bargain price, he could end up just winning a few games, especially at the top of the order, give him that acceleration, and it was great to see David Malan do really well in the last few games against India. Just to people question marks, is he good against spin? Which I honestly think get him up the order as get him to face as many, the fast bowlers. He's a better player of the quicker ball than spin, which is quite evident. And top of the order, opening the batting, I think that could be a good option for him.
Yeah, and something they struggled with last season was the opening pair slowing down after the power play. It was Rahul and Mayank Agarwal, and they slowed down straight after. And Chris Gayle was after he came in, their fortunes changed because obviously he was the aggressor when he played. With David Malan coming in, how does he fit into that setup according to you, Nakul? Do they drop an opener and then play David Malan and Chris Gayle in that batting order with Gayle moving up to open? Or do you think that's too wishful and then basically Malan will have to bat in the middle order? Maybe lower Gayle just drops out.
I think it would be a huge call for Punjab to be dropping Agarwal and Rahul, given the success they had in terms of the runs last year. Rahul's the captain for one thing, so I don't think he's going to be left out. Mayank Agarwal he was a good balance for Rahul because he was able to keep that aggression going longer and that intent going longer through the innings. I'd like to see Rahul do the same. Actually, he had a really good one-day international series, actually doing the complete opposite of what he did in the IPL, where he started slowly and then became very aggressive, which is very much the David Malan model. The classic David Malan innings is he's 12 off 12 balls or 15 off 15 balls and then accelerates through the innings. I don't know how much David Malan. Excuse me. I don't know how much Darren Milan will play, given the overseas balance. You would expect Nicholas Pooran will definitely play pretty much every game. I think Chris Gayle will start the tournament, and then the issue with the major issue with Punjab last year was the death bowling, and they've got overseas options, particularly Jai Richardson, who they spent a huge amount of money on, and I think is a great pickup for them. Is someone we identified as a good option for them. So I think Darren Milan, he might not get every game. I mean, I think he and Chris Gayle might well be rotating with that number 3 slot. He does potentially enable them to be more aggressive through the rest of the innings, through the middle and latter part of the innings, which is something they struggled with. But I don't know. I don't quite see that he'll be as impactful for them as Monty believes, just because of the balance of they need at least one overseas bowler, possibly two.
Yeah, and Monty, I wanted to ask you, obviously, in the spin department, Punjab look a little bit thin. Obviously, they had the young under 19 leg spinner last year who did really well. But is that the weak link in that Punjab lineup? Or if not that, then what do you think is where Punjab Kings are weak at the moment?
I think Punjab Kings, relied a lot on Glenn Maxwell at 5 or 6, and last year so many times they were winning positions, and they just lost the game at the back end. I think at one point they were at bottom of the table, and then suddenly they won 5 in a row, and they were close to making the playoffs. But I think that position is going to be so important for Punjab Kings, just getting off that final hurdle, which, Glenn Maxwell unfortunately had that role, but wasn't getting the team over the line. So this year, who is going to be that person? What will be the team makeup? Will they able to, get the likes of some of the sort of young Indian players, to vacate that position and say, guys, if you want to make it into the ODI team or the T20 team, if you can show how to win IPL games at the back end, is a perfect case to showcase, that. And if I was in the Punjab Kings team and I was an Indian player, a batsman or an all-rounder position, that's what I would be saying to Andy Flower. I said, give me that role. I want to show Virat Kohli. I want to show the rest of the other senior players in the IPL that I'm able to get Punjab Kings over the line.
Yeah, that position's going to be important because last year the batting kind of stopped after the big names at the top. So someone like Sarfaraz Khan, Shah Rukh Khan, who's again another one of the not that one IPL 11 for 2021, but Shah Rukh Khan had a superb domestic season. Sarfaraz Khan's been knocking around for a little while, had a good season again, and has picked up a little bit after a tricky few years. I think guys like Deepak Hooda and Mandeep Singh, who've been around the IPL for a long time, whoever gets that role, it may well be Shah Rukh Khan, based off his domestic season. That role is going to be really important as that bridge between the top order and the rest. Which, as we've talked about with a few other franchises, I think RCB fall into this category. Having that safety net means that your top 4 or 5 can bat more aggressively, and they don't have to worry about wicket retention. We see this with England. England are the perfect example of this. It's so much easier for them to go hard because they know that they've got Moeen Ali down the order, or Sam Curran, or Adil Rashid, or someone who can bat, someone who can score quickly. Or you get situations where England don't end up using Owen Morgan, and that's really difficult to replicate. I think with the spin, I think Ravi Bishnoi was super impressive last year, coming almost straight out of the under-19 World Cup, then off a 6-month break, then into the team. M. Ashwin was impressive as well last year, and then the other spinners, Harpreet Brar was okay in a few games that he did play. Jalal Saxena is very experienced, but has never really dominated at IPL level. Again, this has become a recurring theme of some of these previews, is that they've got a very good overseas player who isn't likely to play because of the balance, and that's Fabian Allen, who's a super player. Everyone who's watched him play and who and people who follow the Caribbean cricket really, really closely, he's a fantastic player. He hits the ball really hard. He's a good spin bowler, one of the best fielders in the world. But I just don't know how you fit him in. Punjab is very much not about. I know people talked a lot about Maxwell not really performing as well as he could have done last year, but it wasn't really about the big names last year. It was about the performance of the second and third seamers, the extra Indian batter, and those little bits, those extra so-called weak links, or those are going to be massively important in terms of having a strong, balanced team throughout. And Punjab were awful at the death with the ball last year. Hopefully, Jai Richardson will make a difference to that, and he's going to have to if Punjab are going to trouble the playoffs.
Alongside Jai Richardson, of course, the Indian contingent, you touched upon it, is going to be key. Arshdeep Singh played a bit last year, and then from the batting perspective, Simran Singh came in. And I think from what we've heard from the Punjab management, that they're putting in a lot of, they're going to be focusing a lot on their local talent. So they're expecting big seasons for Simran Singh as well as Arshdeep Singh. Do you think for players like them, having these big names around will be helpful in terms of maybe guiding them this season? Of course, last year was their first big year in the IPL, but having now done it 1 year, do you think the pressure is a little bit less now this time around for them?
It can go one of two ways, right? I'd be interested to get Monty's perspective on this. As a new player coming into a dressing room with a bunch of established players, it can go one of two ways, right, Monty? It can either be very intimidating or it can be very energizing.
Yeah, look. I think whenever I've entered new teams or go into a new club, and even at England, when I was making my comebacks, you always the mindset and the attitude is to do and impress the coaches and the captain. You don't want to be sort of in a position where you're actually questioning Rahul or Andy Flower. What are these coaching methods? We can do this better, that better. These youngsters are there to actually add, to to enhance the Punjab Kings team, and especially, youngsters. I always, whenever I'm playing and there's a youngster in our team, I'm like, there's always a time when the seniors, you know, they get tired, from the game, or there'll be time when, they could do with the youngsters just boosting that energy in the field, providing that impetus during training. And I think that's what, any young sort of, cricketer who's just signed up in the IPL, that should be I think their mindset and attitude is just to be a breath of fresh air and think, gosh, I'm so glad we've got these young players coming in, because, whenever we want that intensity or the training sessions just to be that bit more energetic, we've got the youngsters to provide that energy. And that's how it should be with these youngsters in the Punjab Kings team.
Well, and also knowing that from an on-field point of view, knowing that your performances can be the difference between your team making the playoffs and not. Like somebody like, Arshdeep Singh was good in patches last year. A really good spell from Ravi Bishnoi, a good, 20 off 12 from Shah Rukh Khan or somebody down the order. Someone who can allow Nicholas Pooran or Chris Gayle to continue that intent throughout the innings and not have to slow down worrying about loss of wickets. Not that Pooran, I think, does that in general. I think I have no problem with his mindset. But that can be the difference between winning a game and losing a game. And if you're a player, you have to assume, like, I've been picked because they think I'm good enough. And taking that confidence into a game, and creating that setup from a coach's and captain's point of view is going to be very important. I think the Punjab were one of the big winners of the auction. I think that's fair to say, with Jai Richardson and with Riley Meredith as well. So they've got backup there. And as I say, you have a guy like Fabian Allen, who might not play very many games this year, and Chris Gayle or Davin Malan, whoever you pick, you've got two high quality performers there. So I think Punjab are a better place than they were last year.
Monty, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions before we wrap up on Punjab Kings. First being, is there a way for Punjab to fit in Pooran, Gayle, and Malan alongside Jai Richardson, who I assume will start because of his big price tag, as the 4 overseas? Do you think that's possible, or do you think they'll go with 2 bowlers and 2 batsmen?
No, look, I think what worked really well was playing Chris Gayle and not playing him, all the games. He's, even because of his age and how he sort of performs. Yeah, look, I'm sure he will probably want to play, every game. But I think that management of Chris Gayle is going to be crucial, how Punjab Kings, qualify. I can't see him playing all the games because, with his age, the last thing you want him to get injured or not perform at his best. And I think also that respite, just having that rotation, amongst maybe play David Malan one game, rest Chris Gayle. I think that would work really well. And then it allow some of the other sort of overseas players take up that responsibility, because, you can easily get into that hole of thinking, well, Chris Gayle is going to win us the game. He's done it numerous times before. But, you want him fresh for the big key matches, and that's, I would probably, manage Chris Gayle like that. I'll say, look, for the big games, Chris Gayle is going to play. And I'm sure there's some of the teams are slightly stronger than the others. People tend to say every game is a big game in the IPL. But, there's a few teams, the likes of Mumbai Indians, they look like a strong side, like they've always been. We've got Sunrisers. They're another a good top team. And Delhi Capitals, These are the 3 which I think are probably slightly above from the other ones. And they're the ones you kind of probably think, right, they're the games I'm going to make sure that Chris Gayle plays, or, try and manage him in a way where he sort of, understands that, they're trying to get the best out of him.
And I think that's the beauty of the IPL, the world number 1 batsman, T20, David Malan. There's no guarantee that he'll play in the starting 11, and it's only in the IPL you see that. So the last question I wanted to ask both of you is, obviously we know that the T20 World Cup's around the corner in September. And with India, there's a problem of just having so many riches, and Mohammad Shami just coming back from injury. He'll want to break into that T20 squad for the World Cup, right? So does you think that'll help him raise his performance, because he knows that there's so much competition going around in the Indian team now, and if he wants to go to the T20 World Cup, he'll really have to perform well in the IPL? And do you think that'll help Punjab Kings a lot as well?
Shami doesn't need to be told that. No Indian fast bowler or no Indian player really needs to be told that. Mohammad Shami was very good in the power play for them last year. There were a few games where he and Sheldon Cottrell destroyed teams in the power play. He's quick. He moves the ball. He has a skiddy bouncer. He's got a very good Yorker. What he is not is a death bowler, and that was a role he was having to do last year because of a lack of depth. And he struggled. Now, India have a lot of options in terms of the fast bowling, and he's probably below Bumrah. He's below a fit Bhuvneshwar Kumar. He might be below Natarajan now and Shardul Thakur because of the success they've had. The roles that he can perform are much more limited, but he can do that sort of top of the innings power play and middle overs role very well. He performed well for that. That was one of the parts that worked in terms of him bowling at the top and in the middle last year for Punjab. And, for them to improve and to kick on and to be more consistent and not have to rely on this ridiculous late run to get them close or having to rely on them winning 2 super overs or tying super over and then winning a second super over and this type of thing. They're going to need everything that worked last year to work and more stuff. Mohammad Shami's in the conversation for the World T20. I think that he's behind a few people just because of the type of bowler he is and the type of circumstances in which he can be effective.
I think Mohammad Shami needs a good IPL this year because the emergence of Mohammad Suraj, who seems to be a like-for-like replacement, similar bowlers, quite aggressive in their run-ups and bowl, with intent, and they get that ball to move. Both of them, I think, are kind of that similar role, and I think, who would Virat Kohli go with? Does he go with the experience or does he go with Mohammad Suraj, slightly taller? I think offers a bit more with the ball. Gets that ball to just bounce more off a length than I think Mohammad Sami would. But look, I think part of this India team is that you need a good, healthy crop of, like 5 to 6, even more than that, fast bowlers. And, Mohammad Sami definitely is in the, top sort of 5 or top 8 bowlers in Indian cricket, for seamers that they are. So look, every team to be successful, every international team to be successful, you need that. Mohammad Sami may have to, think that I may not play as many games for India, but I've got to still think that I've got a chance, and he may not have that dominant role, because there's other sort of, with the new rotation policy coming into play, and the youngsters, coming in. So, he may have his chance at some point, but if he has a great IPL, suddenly he can be that first bowler that they play in the T20 World Cup, and that's the great thing about this IPL cricket, any of these players, it only takes 1 or 2 games, you're great, and you have a handful of, not performing well, suddenly you just go below the pecking list, So, there's everything to play for, and there's a lot of sort of experienced IPL players who'll be thinking, I may have a chance to get into this T20 World Cup. Youngsters proving their point. Again, just, we know why this is the best competition in the world.
I think we've covered everything for Punjab now. There's so many storylines going into this IPL, which makes it all the more interesting, even if it didn't need to be. So I think it'll be a great season. We'll see if the name change brings them any more luck and they make the playoffs this year. But I think that's it for part 6, and I'll see you in part 7. My dog's really excited about the IPL as well. He wants to give his 2 cents in. I'll see you guys in part 7, where we'll cover Sunrisers Hyderabad.